you've been watching what's happening in Winnipeg and wondering if the Interlake market is doing the same thing, the short answer is not exactly. Because once you look past the headline numbers, you start to see the different parts of the Interlake are moving in different ways. So in this video, I'm going to break down what's happening across the Interlake in March, where things are holding up better than others, and what that could mean if you're thinking about buying or selling in the Interlake this year. Starting with the Interlake overall for March, there were about 24 detached home sales with a median price of just over $362,000. Homes took about 34 days on average to sell, with a sold to list price ratio at about 98.7%. Compared to March of last year, sales are slightly down from 26 to 24. So at the broad Interlake level, March looked a bit softer than last year. But before taking too much from that, it helps to zoom in into different towns because the different individual areas are telling different stories. Before we go deeper into the local market, if you're thinking about selling, downsizing, or just wondering what your place might be worth in today's market, the best first step is usually a quick conversation, because in a market like this, the broad averages only tell part of the story. Now for the smaller Interlake areas, I want to zoom out a bit and use the first quarter of the year instead of just 1 month. And the reason is simple. When you're dealing with smaller communities, 1 or 2 sales can swing the numbers pretty quickly. So using January through March gives us a better sense of the real trend. In Q1 of 2025, there were 32 sales with an average sale price of over $363,000. And in Q1 of 2026, there were 23 sales with the average sale price of $358,000. So sales are down year over year, but the average price is only off by about 1.5%. So that shows Selkirk actually held up fairly well. So even with fewer sales overall, pricing has remained relatively steady compared to the broader Interlake numbers. Looking at the South Interlake area, like Stonewall, Balmoral, Stony Mountain, and Warren, this is where we often see a softer trend. Q1 of 2025, there's 23 sales with an average price of $465,000. Now in Q1 of 2026, there were only 12 sales with the average sale price of just under $440,000. Moving on to the Gimli area, Q1 of 2025, there was 20 sales, average price about $308,000. Now in 2026, the first quarter, there was 11 sales with the average price of about $323,000. So here sales are down, but pricing has actually held up and even moved up a little higher. So that suggests some lower activity, but strong enough for buyer demand to support prices. Gimli is not telling the same story as the Interlake overall. One of the biggest takeaways from all of this is the Interlake is not behaving like one single market. When you break it down, Selkirk looks relatively stable. Gimli has lower sales, but pricing is still holding up. And then South Interlake for now is the softest overall. If you're trying to understand what your home might sell for, or where the opportunities as a buyer may be, you really have to look into the specific area, not just the overall Interlake average. For buyers, this kind of market can create opportunity. Some areas are seeing less competition, and that can mean a bit more room for negotiation. For sellers, the biggest takeaway is your pricing strategy matters when activity is uneven. Depending on where you are, you may be competing in a market that feels very different from the next town over. And comparing the Interlake directly to Winnipeg can be tricky. Winnipeg tends to behave more consistently because of volume, but in Interlake, smaller sales counts mean each local area can move differently. Interlake overall looked softer in March. Selkirk stayed relatively stable. Gimli saw lower activity with prices holding, and the South Interlake was the softest of the 3 area breakdowns. So the market is still moving, just not evenly across every community. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, downsizing, or making a move somewhere in the Interlake, you can look at your area or your timing and what these numbers might actually mean for you in your next step. I've put 2 simple options in the description below. One's a quick link to set up a time to see what your options are. The other is a downsizing guide if you're still in the early stages. It's just a place to start. And if you want to keep going with the numbers, I've got a full breakdown of the Winnipeg market in my next video.